Um, my wife and I were connected as twin flame soulmates to that system, Julian Assange through his sister,
Uh-huh.
brother. Yeah, back when we were getting all of the four pillars of the transition stuff. That was
Really?
interesting.
Really?
The
I,
system
s-
buster thing.
I saw a quote that he had up today, and I don't remember what it was. I saw it on X, and it wasn't, there's a lot of people, we're live. There's a lot of people that I notice, there's a lot of I told you so going on. I told you so. I've been talking about this since then. It's all this egoic, I want credit, they're the bad guys. And I went back to this video by Bill Ryan, who used to be the partner to Carrie Cassidy at Project Camelot. And they
Oh
split
yeah,
up. They split up like in 2009, 2010, and then he went to Alpha Zebra. Oh, you can see it on YouTube, but he hasn't put anything up in like 8 years. Really interesting though, where she was the side that, I'm not taking anything away from her. Expose, and that kind of thing. And he was too, but his I guess his stance on it was we can't get into that. We can't get into the finger pointing. We can't get into. So I was doing some research on him today because I was looking for a video that he put up about 10 years ago where he talks about all of this for about an hour. And the latter part of it, he talks about what we talk about, like New Earth, like, it's right here. It's the energy we carry forward that's creating and, so on and so on. But I was doing some research on him today, and he moved to Ecuador a few years ago. And he's living in this place where there's a high, what am I trying to say? The average lifespan is, like 100 years. It's up in I think in the Andes in Ecuador, one of the mountain ranges. And he's living off grid and totally checked out. Because
wow.
I wanted to see if he had anything to say about what was going on. Yeah, welcome back to the Gareth and Katie double hour of power. And Gareth has cleaned up well. I think him and his wife must have a date tonight. I don't know. A lot of stuff going on. We got 5 or 6 X flares and I believe about 40 M flares, and they haven't even said how many C flares because it would probably blow our mind. But the X flares and the M flares, I think over the last almost 3 days, there's got to be over 40. And there was 5 or 6 X flares. We had another one today, and of course that big one was like an 8.8, which was the second largest in this solar cycle. I think the last one was in May of 24 is what I read. But yeah, so a lot going on. I don't know if you have any insight into that, where it's going to go today, but I'm sure it'll be spontaneous, intuitive, creative, imaginative, and courageous as usual. All right, I'm signing out now. Have a good show.
Cheers, Todd. Thanks, mate.
Thanks.
Katie, hiya. Is that ring light okay? My glasses are a bit reflective.
Yeah, they're not reflecting in it well, I mean, just like a tiny bit, but I don't know. I'm sure somebody in the chats will tell me that my glasses
Yeah.
look ridiculous and your glasses have a stupid reflection.
Yeah, inevitably someone out somewhere. Your
Not
glasses are
our
great. I
people.
like it.
Yeah, I like them. I was playing around with my Zoom earlier and I was putting these on, which I can't see because the other ones are my computer glasses, but yeah.
No, we need more colour and light in the world.
Right? I even
See,
wore my extraterrestrial earrings today.
I love that you've got some.
Yeah.
That was
Lovely lady on Instagram made them, and somebody I knew was wearing them, and I said, "Oh, I want those." This is, years ago.
awesome.
So, thanks.
Show me closer.
Thanks.
What are they?
What's that?
Get a bit closer. Oh, I
Oh,
see. Yeah,
yeah.
it seems to me. There it is.
Wait a minute. There we go. And then there's a nice big piece of amethyst at the bottom.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Awesome.
it's all bead work. So a lot of work went into them. Sunshine says, quite key fancy. How do you say QUE? I don't know. Friend. K fancy. I don't
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
know.
Is that
And of
French?
course, my sparkles. I got my sparkles.
See, I can't do any of that. I mean, I could, but that's your job. I'm just got black
That is
on.
my job. That is my job. There's already a question in the chats.
Great. Let's go.
Yeah, and Kirsty from the UK, who doesn't typically make our lives because time and all that, sent me a bunch of questions.
I saw you told me. Great. Fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. But Roseanne actually asks, years ago, I kept hearing about the big solar flare, and recently it's come up again. Do the Arcturians say anything about that? And years ago, when I first had my awakening, that was like a huge thing. It's died down in recent years, I think, probably as things got much more real, I guess, if that's a way to say it. Everybody was kept like a girl in the universe. I used to follow her. I had a session with her once. She's lovely. But like everyone talks about the flash, like something's happening. So what do you know about that?
Right. Yes, yes. There's a fair bit to that. Absolutely. Okay, where do we start? I remember Tom God saying, "You are all as a star," and there's a fair bit to that, and also it connects to what I call the Atlantean destruction event, and what was behind that. The fact that the planet's frequency and our frequency are the same, and it's the only two things on the planet that have the same frequency: the human body and the planet. Same for all self-aware life, and that connects to the sun. And so these transition events that happen in Atlantis and also right now are all connected to the sun. So what started to play out, you might have heard of a lot of people in 2016 seeing 444 and 555 everywhere. The number sequences started popping up. That was a big thing on the internet. People started going, "Why am I seeing 444 and 555 everywhere?" And that happened to me as well. And that's because we started to move into the shift of the fourth dimension, which is what you might have heard of as the end times. In the end times, the charlatans will be revealed, all sorts of stuff around that. That's really about about time changing, because time's a bridge between fifth dimension and the physical dimensions, fifth dimension of spirit consciousness and the three physical dimensions. So time is non-linear and linear at the same time. So that's one of the strategies that shut us down, was making time into a wall. So it disconnects us. It's one of the ways it manifested. Well, what the sun's doing is raising the frequency of the planet's core, and that's having a direct impact on that frequency of the human body, which is connected to where we were at during Atlantis, or before the fall of Atlantis, where we went into the shadow side of the ego. So what's the coronal mass ejection stuff that's going on is also connected to that. So that's the electromagnetic field around the planet. That has a big effect on how we perceive things, but it also has a massive effect on the physical reality. So there's two things going on at the same time. Spiritual realities coming through the time-space barrier, becoming more conscious. Physical reality is being forced to conform. So what happened back in 2016 as we started to move into the fourth dimension transforming that's when people, 2016 to between 16 and 18, I guess, is when all the stuff about the solar flare really started coming out. Well, that actually started to happen. And then, of course, the knock-on effect is physical reality. So people kind of dropped away from the solar flash, thinking that it was about one thing that was going to transform everything.
Yes.
But what actually happened is we started to get into the ramifications of the fact that the sun was starting to shift its frequency, which is physical reality starting to change, the impact that was having on us. So that's where the change really happens. And it's kind of lots of little moments that sort of add up together. I think one problem with all that is that we think it's going to be a dramatic event. We want it to
Yeah.
change. We have a very linear, this gets back to time, a linear approach to everything. So we have a problem, there is a solution, the solar flash was going to happen, and then of course nothing happens in that sense. But what did happen under the surface was all these little events that you don't really understand the significance of at the time, but they have a knock-on effect. And here we are now. So
Right.
the reason everybody's at the point we're at now is precisely because of what started to play out, and that has a direct result, or a direct impact. That was a direct impact of the sun. So the transition, you could call it, is a whole sequence of events that lead up to a single point. So there is a pivot point, absolutely, and it has a lot to do with the sun. Interestingly, God said of the time, the Atlantis, the destruction event of Atlantis, he said, we are more compassionate now.
Yes. Yes,
Which is
we
good to
talked
know.
about that the other day because they saw what the Atlanteans went through. They saw the destruction. They saw the horror of the physical life they were living and then was, ended. And so they have more compassion now. I love that. I love that. That you and I can tell everybody on this call, you and I had a Zoom call last week. It was 45 minutes and it blew my mind. And the first 2 minutes of it, I'm trying to figure out how to edit. That's never been my wheelhouse. But, we got to stop saying those things. Like, I don't know how to do that. And can't do that. Like, that's not a thing anymore. Right. So as soon as
Right.
I said, that's not my wheelhouse, I don't like doing that, I thought, ooh, well, maybe I'll learn to do that and I'll end up being really good at it and I'll love it. Right. Because that's the way we got to go with everything now. Like, whatever you used
Right.
to do or used to think you were, you like, let that go. It's like,
Right.
it's an open book now. You can do anything.
Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah.
it. I mean, and that's one of the things with the solar flash, and the thing about the fifth dimension and the fourth dimension and how the sun reacts and why you're all as a star, how the sun, I mean, you think about like for instance, the biosphere of the planet, the ecosystem of the planet, one of the main, without the sunlight, it couldn't exist. So it
Mhm.
starts as photonic energy that plants photosynthesize into stored energy in the plant, which then sets off a whole thing that spreads that energy around through the biosphere, that creates bigger and bigger, like the biosphere of the planet can get more and more complex, and the main engine room of energy behind that is sunlight, and then there's other forms of energy like what's stored in the earth that plants can use. Plant eaters eat the plants, meat eaters eat the plant eaters, and this whole chain of reaction. Then they decompose, and it creates fertile soil, and the whole thing gets more and more complex. But the thing that drives it is sunlight. In the same way, consciousness it's because sunlight and consciousness are the same thing. So without our light, our awareness, the universe can't exist, because if there's no one to be aware of it, it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. Right.
So there's a direct
Yeah.
relationship between our consciousness going up, the power of our consciousness to co-create reality, made in the image and likeness of God, and this sort of transition event playing out. And the fifth dimension is beyond space time. So things like astral projection, if you're anyone who's had ET contact, it's all astral projection. Or if you've ever experienced telepathy, that's all a product of the fifth dimension. And God said that all self-aware life is five-sided or five-dimensional. That's why all self-aware life somewhere in the body plan will have five. The star analogy, you are all as a star. So it represents self-aware life. So that what I think will happen at some point is, like there's a series of mass coronal ejections playing out right now that they've never seen before, right at the point where the astrology that's about to come, and specifically the Saturn-Neptune conjunction on the 20th of February, that's never happened before into something like 14,000 years. Or what happened 12,000 years ago, the Atlantean destruction event. So the astrology right now, which is again the sum total energy of the solar system, the mass of the solar system and the electromagnetic energy that molecular structure creates a whole. So that's sort of transforming in a way that it hasn't done in 12,000 years. And that's right when the sun is going through this whole process, and the sun is the engine room behind the entire solar system. It runs the frequency, the core frequency of all planets. And so that is playing out in the big picture geopolitical world as us being forced or brought to a point where we take responsibility for being the creative force behind the inversion. Yes, there's a they. Yes, they have an agenda. And yes, they sold us the lie. But without us buying the lie, without thinking, without really reflecting on it, it's up to us to make, we have free will. It's up to us to make an informed choice. We inadvertently created the very system that's held us slaves, just
Right.
like our own thinking. Like you were saying, we've got to stop thinking small. Tom said you insist
Mm-hmm.
you have a human nature. So it's
Right.
all connected. It's all connected. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of
Yeah.
stuff going on within people right now. I think a lot of people on this call will probably be feeling it. This first 2 months of this year have been pretty interesting. I know they have for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're still in 2025. But again, that shifts right when Saturn and Neptune come together. And what does that represent too, by the way, and how does that connect to the sun? Well, Saturn and Neptune represent you could say, the three physical dimensions connected to time, Saturn, and the astral connected to time is Neptune. So Neptune's got this ethereal dreamer quality, and that's Pisces. It's the final sign in the zodiac. And they're becoming Neptune and Saturn conjunct at 0 degrees Aries, which is the beginning point of the cycle. And that's why it has, Saturn and Neptune conjunct many times, I think every 36 years. But the last time it happened on 0 degrees Aries was 12,000 years ago, 14,000 years ago. So
Right.
literally, we've come full circle. 12,500 years is how long it takes the solar system. Sorry, 26,500 years is how long it takes our solar system to go all the way around the galaxy. So we're at the 180-degree point, the opposite point that we were at the time of Atlantis. So we're looking back at the point of origin of this entire inversion, where it started, and seeing our role right at the point where we're seeing our role. And that domino effect rewriting history. As soon as the COVID narrative collapses, that light of our awareness lights up. Like there is a
Yeah.
they with an agenda. Love and light, brother, sister. You're not the enemy. Finally, all the lines of polarity. They know that victims become perpetrators. They create this
Mm-hmm.
false programming in us that polarity is about conflict. And we've just been looking at each other as the problem all the time while they sit back playing this reactionaryism, problem, reaction, solution. So that reactionaryism, because getting back to when we started to go through the fourth dimension, the sun started to trigger a process that we, in our minds, thought it was one thing. In reality, it was undoing our subconscious programming, which is where the reactionaryism comes from. So we've been held in, as hard as it is, the key to all of this is emotional intelligence, getting the feminine principle in us to hold the moment fully without just jumping in there and turning it into something, the ego that controls. That's tough because you've got to be held in not knowing. So we've been going through this process of thinking it's this and then oh it's that but the whole time
Yeah.
we've been missing a lot of the times that the transformation's been playing out the entire time. So the foundation of the inversion in our thinking, the structure of that foundation has been gradually transformed. But because it's unconscious, we're not aware of it consciously.
Right.
And at a certain point, the mental structure above that has to change. It collapses because the foundation doesn't support it in that form anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what's playing out right now and what's happening this year. And it's going to happen for everybody, whether they like it or not, which is why God said it's better for you if you choose it. So everyone on this
Mm-hmm.
call, you're going to connect the dots in a major way. As the year plays out, you're going to start to connect the dots. The great coming together is what the Arcturians called it. And
Yeah.
again, the sun going up, your consciousness going up, your ability to see all of this clearly going up. what's playing out there in the world, giving you words to describe this process in the subconscious you haven't had before. That's what connecting the dots. You'll be able to look back on what's been playing out in your own personal life, different for everyone, just like each fingerprint's different. Going, oh, wow, that's why this happened. You'll start to see the patterns, which is the sacred masculine. You'll start to connect the dots, which means as you look at what plays out in the world, you'll start seeing it through a much clearer. There's a relationship. It's just like a mirror reflecting the process you've been going through since 2016, particularly the process the world's going through now, connecting through in your mind. You connect it together so that you see the relationship between what you've been living and what's playing out there. Well, for everybody else, the rug gets pulled straight out from under them in one go. Their whole world falls apart because there is a they with an agenda and they have access to an apparatus that can pull off a lie on that scale. The COVID narrative, everyone's heard of it.
So, there's a couple questions in the chat I want to get to, but it's funny. Apparently, Bill Gates came back with doing some backpedaling on the whole climate change scam. What are you showing us? We can't see it. Was it 1222? No, it's okay. You and your numbers, I love it. So Lindsay says, how did those of the interference come back after they were wiped out at Atlantis? Wasn't that the point of the flood?
It's the other way around.
Yeah.
It's the other way around. Atlantis was, in its original form, this civilization of Atlantis was actually put together by the Hawk, who was the Nazarene. He oversaw the entire seeding of the planet from beginning to end. And that was very, very strategic. That was done very, God said there is no other planet in the universe with the biodiversity of planet Earth. So that was all done by, like I've said before, it's a conglomerate of multiple civilizations throughout the galaxy all in one place. And the Nazarene as the Hawk oversaw all of that. So it was civilization in its divine state, put together on a planet that was deliberately created to be the most physically dense. So that meant there was a vulnerability which was exploited by those of the interference. And like I said, that's the energy exchange, the sun. When you get polarity, plus positive, negative polarity, you create it has a dynamo effect. So that's masculine, feminine together. And in its most physically dense form, the attractive force between masculine and feminine was at its most powerful. So in its highest state, the capacity for us to create reality was off the chart. Like that's the human capacity for creativity is massive, and it's very well, it's coveted throughout the universe. Our creative power, our ability to problem solve and creative power is massive. But what happened also is that the ability for those of the interference to manipulate us and drop us down into desire so that it became about what you can take from the other. So the feminine was at the most, the attractive force of the feminine, which is all power comes from the female, was at its highest. But if the masculine principle is shut down to its lowest form, it'll be about taking that energy, not moving with it.
Right.
And that happened. So Atlantis was infiltrated by a group, and that element that fell for it grew and grew and grew and grew to a certain point where critical mass, the 100th monkey effect, was reached, which meant the whole race chose to explore or move into the shadow side of the ego. We made a free will choice, which the net result of was we had to experience the ramifications of that, we had to go all the way through the ego that controls, the dark side of the ego, the shadow side of the ego. Nazarene being the ego in its sacred form, an archetype of that, what we call the one that fell, which is represented by Darth Vader in Star Wars, is the shadow side of the ego. So we chose to do that, and that's what we've been going through for the last 12,500 years, the ramifications of that. So Atlantis had to be shut down to its most dense form. So that's the destruction event. That's what it was. Physical reality had to match that choice. So we couldn't exist at high civilization and be in that form. We chose to go all the way to the ground, to the lowest level.
Right.
And
Right.
we've been moving through a process ever since then of coming back to this point right now.
Right.
And those are the interference have
So
been trying to shut us down and keep us stuck in that while they figure out a way to make the transition with us now. That was always the motive.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That I've always understood. As much as I can. Totality of comprehension is not for your human selves,
That's it.
right?
Well,
Um,
we gave our creative power to them. So we made them powerful and shut ourselves down. So that was what the
right,
Atlantean destruction of them actually did. So it was the other
right.
way around, actually. But now it's reversing. We're taking our power back and
So
they're shutting down.
I I don't know if you answered that or if Sunshine feels you answered that, but they ask what destroyed Atlantis. So
We did, but they tricked us into
right,
doing it.
yes, okay, that's what I thought.
That's how it works. Free
Maybe
will. Free will is
free
the golden law
will.
of the universe. It can't be interfered with, but we can be tricked into making a choice that we don't say that's free will. It's incumbent on us to make an informed choice. And the thing about sexual desire is if you're at that lowest point, you don't think, you just go into it. And then you pay the price later. And how many people have had relationships which seem like a good idea at the time, but boy, do you pay a price because there are subconscious patterns running. You got to be aware, and there's a lot to it.
Yeah,
And
it's
the whole
why for me, like I can only speak to me. I can't speak to everyone here, but after my awakening in 2021, turning around and looking at, the lesser decisions I made and the poor behavior I had and the unconscious giving away of my power, and just it's mind numbing on a personal level. But that's why we are a microcosm of what's happening to humanity right now. Humanity has to see that this darkness exists simply because we believed in it.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's the
So
only reason.
right, the only reason. That's why everyone's like, it's a choice, and those of us in hell are like, it's not a choice. I'm not choosing this. But
Yeah, it's
ultimately, it
forced
is a
on.
choice.
It
But
feels like it's been
Carter,
forced on us.
what's that?
It feels like it's been forced on us, but there's a deeper
Yeah, and in
reality to it.
some way, with trickery, it has, with
Hmm.
kind of an uninformed, deceived free will, so to speak, I guess. Carter says, do you think that there is another timeline split? Beings who choose to have their free will in consciousness and those who do not?
Great question, and that gets back to the call we had the other day, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now that's a really good question because there are a couple of other ramifications about this timeline that we're on now being the most physically dense because we're right at the foundation layer or fabric of space-time that the whole universe is based on, like the foundation layer that the universe emanates from. We're the self-aware life that exists at that point, and we're the only race that does in the whole universe. So what that does is just like all form becomes less complex. Like for instance, when the Earth first started life, the biosphere was at its most simple. And then we go through all these so-called destruction events or extinction events, which just compresses what was there into a much more powerful creative force. And then when it comes back, it builds up even more complexity. So we keep going through this in-breath, out-breath process, and the planet became more and more complex. The biosphere gets more and more complex as a result. You need that in a creative process. Well, at its most simple form, the universe starts actually very simple and becomes more complex over time. So you get these massive complexities that play out. So in the timeline sense, it's at its most simple here. So our timeline, you could say, is a singularity. There's one timeline, but it has ramifications. So one of the things, those are the interference we're trying to do. You might have heard of divide and conquer. There's lots of different ways you can express that. We get pulled out of the truth of who we are into a separate self. So that division starts with us. We go from being the truth of who we are to this mind mental construct, a sense of self centered around self-doubt. So there's two selves, so we split. That's one way. But the other way is timelines. So what they were trying to do is get all our creative energy into creating a false timeline, and then when we finally choose it, it replaces this timeline. So there were some ramifications of that. There were multiple timelines that split off from this one with lots of different variations. And a lot of those versions of us were interacting with us and have done throughout history. Sumerian tablets were placed by some of them. There's been a lot of interaction through history where they've planted information to try to get us at this point to connect with them because they want something from us to keep their timeline alive. So those are the interference that have been using different strategies, awarenesses, technology to put together this fourth beast system, the octopi that binds, the corporations, Admiralty law, the bioweapons they've been using, the frequency weapons, why do they work, how do they... There was a lot of the understanding came from these other split timelines because if we choose the wrong for them, they cease to exist. So we're critical. So what you could say is just like the reality we're in now is an inversion of Atlantis, high civilization in its natural state. This world we live in is the exact opposite. It's slavery. It's not freedom, it's slavery. You know, Shakespeare's Julius Caesar was what happened, you know, to the Roman Empire, going from a republic to a totalitarian system. The same thing happened in every civilization. So that corruption called the inversion is also corruptions of timelines. So what's playing out right now is all versions of the corruption of this timeline
distortion, right?
Including multiple timelines.
They're like the distortion is being corrected and distilled back down to the one true timeline. Yeah. And then so I hope that helps.
We can elaborate on that too. If I haven't answered any of these questions properly, you know, anyone still wants to know more.
Yeah, just ask in the chat and I'll read. Patty says, you say God says it's better if you choose it. I had also heard from another beautiful source who says something very similar and that it will be within 2 years. Thoughts? I say a year, Patty. I say right now. And in fact, I did hear something similar to that. I'll talk about that later on. You go ahead and answer, Patty.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, God said about this process, we are reversing the inversion with you. We are bringing you back across the valley you should not have crossed, referring to what happened in Atlantis. The valley of the mind being the ego. Consciousness comes first, then the ego. So what happened in Atlantis, we chose to go into desire and control and self, like what's the word? We put the ego in front of our heart.
Right.
So everything became mind. The masculine principle out of balance negates the feminine principle, which it actually comes from. So that process is being reversed and has been for a very, very long time. But right now we're at the pivot point. So it's just like every transformation, there's a process that leads up to it, and then there's a moment where it happens. So the Atlantean destruction event, for instance, it was centuries in the making, but then it all happened in a day. And then the ramifications of that have been thousands of years in the making. So the same with this moment right now. I think by the end of this year, you'll be blown away. Firstly, open contact. It's one thing to hear the words and you play around with it in your mind. It'll be great when open contact happens, but the actual reality of it hitting our civilization, the profound impact of that there's so much to it. Like.
Right.
Our world will never be the same again.
You said that. It basically open contact undoes everything. I mean, first of all, free energy. And then, you've described this to me so many times, 3-mile wide ships over all these big cities. Like everything's up for debate then. Like everything's up for question. Everything's like, what? That's so exciting. That's so exciting. Sam has said something really good. She's like, we've become fragmented over centuries, and now one of the main goals in coming back to the truth is to reintegrate on the micro level. We become whole again individually in order for the whole to reflect that.
Yeah,
That's
that's
why.
right.
Right. That's why it's an inside job, why it's an isolating job, why it's an only you can do it job. Nobody can do it for you. So
It's
as we
so true.
continue to reintegrate our shadow, so to speak, like that's another thing that can be speak, but it's a very real thing. Or like soul retrieval. Maybe it's not exactly that. Fragmented souls, right? Retrieving all the parts of you over multiple lifetimes. And then, of course, this physical life you're in reflects then out in the whole. So then
Correct.
Lindsay says Sylvia Brown predicted September of 2026. I'll take it. I'm good with that.
Yes. The funny, the Arcturians told me, when was that? January last year. They said you will not end the year in the same situation with which you began it. And of course, personally,
Mhm.
for me, I actually came to out of a coma. Probably, I think it was about an hour, maybe 2 hours before. Oh, it was on New
Me
Year's
too.
Eve, but
Yeah.
about 11:30 p.m., something like that. So I actually watched. I watched New Year. I watched this flick into 2026 while I was going through this whole process with the Arcturians behind me and God in the room next to me, guiding me through this whole thing connected to the Sphinx. So they weren't kidding, and and I
Yeah.
think a lot of people have been going through the same process in their own way, because don't underestimate the power of what you've been doing personally on an individual level. When you're willing to recognize there's something massive going on and you don't know what it is, and you've got a problem in the way you've been living life that you don't know what it is. So that gap of not knowing, by being willing to let it be there,
Mhm.
it's like we inherit with that. Inheriting that gap is the question: what's the truth? And that's a frequency that attracts the answer. So a big
Yes.
reason why those of the interferences system is collapsing is because of that very phenomenon. There are too many people willing to receive the truth whilst they're in the lie, whilst they're in everything they're throwing at us to pull us back into their system. We still
Yep.
can't let go of that gap. So that very same strategies don't have the hook. We don't have the hook within us to pull us back into their way of thinking anymore, and that's
Yep.
spreading exponentially because of that. Darkness in
Yep.
physics is an absence of light, an absence of awareness,
Yep.
and it's growing massively. And we're at a point now where it's out of control. It's time is speeding up, and the whole thing is speeding up exponentially, precisely because of that. So by the end of this year, we'll have open
Yeah.
contact, direct energy.
Yeah.
That'll undo the central banking system, which is already collapsing.
Which is
The
already
just
collapsing
like
right now. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, because the
Terrell,
thing
but
that
Terrell,
happened
sorry, what?
I was just going to say the thing that happened in 2016, what started is a 9 year cycle, which was a microcosm of the entire Kali Yuga cycle. And that's a thing in Hinduism where we go into the dark side, which represents, or it represents what happened since we fell in Atlantis. We went into the dark side of human nature and we had to explore it, come back out the other side. Well, this 9 year cycle ended at the end of 2025. And God said nine is completion. So we did a wrap up that came together. What's been going on for everybody in that period is our subconscious reality is being worked on by the all that is. Because as soon as you say, I don't know what's going on, but there's something happening, I don't know what it is, you switch back on as a receiver, is the way Tom put it. So we've
Yeah.
been helped to have our subconscious transformed. Whilst that's been playing out, what this group called the White Hats, people who are switched on within government, banking, military, politics, economics, everything, all the systems of this civilization have been unified and working against those of the interference at the top level. So it's like the external version of the subconscious layer being worked on. The Arcturians showed it to me as a pincer move, classic pincer move, which is you surround the enemy on two fronts. from the top down and the bottom up. So this transformation actually happens, but it's the ordinary people that are making the difference. That's what's always kept us stuck, the human race, for 12,000 years. So that's the big difference, is all of us who have been willing to ask that question and let life take us through a process without arguing with it, but also that
Sure.
question, what's the truth, can't leave
Yeah.
you alone.
I do.
So
I do plenty of arguing, as you know, but I still haven't wavered from the path. I haven't,
exactly.
yeah, yeah. Truth has to come. Like it's truth or die. I've said that on
Right.
numerous shows. But
Well, this year is where the two things come together in the physical.
yeah, yeah.
The top layer and up.
Sam said something great. She said, absolutely. We have hid in shame, teaching ourselves we are bad and wrong rather than simply having a human experience. The shadow is not bad, it's growth, right? It's like the question I asked you on our Zoom, the one with just you and me. I was like, okay, so if we are in a true paradigm shift from 3 to 5D, and we're all going to have the answers and know the things, then doesn't it kind of stop God's like fractions of God's expanding God's knowledge? Remember, I asked it much more eloquently, but basically, if we all know the things, then where's the growth? Like, what is the point of this whole thing? Right.
Yeah.
But I don't want to miss Kirsty's questions. But, and Lindsay says we're taking our power back in this lifetime. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Something
yeah.
is shifting, she says. I can feel it in my bones. Yeah.
I mean, the big thing that changes is you reconnect to your heart connection to the universe, which is all knowing. But not it's all we know, but we're also by being given this gift of free will and the ability to be separate from God, which is the mind. That's the ego in like the Nazarene and God connected together is the ego in sacred form connected to its source. So really, we just come back to the truth of who we are and our ability to connect, to know each step. So we're separate from God in space time. This is the importance of the fourth dimension. The fourth dimension is what creates the universe. The time, the ability to separate one moment from the next. It's just one. Time gives us the ability to separate. So that's where darkness comes from, is really just an absence of the awareness of the next moment. And that's an illusion of separation. This gets back to Neptune and Saturn conjunction. So it's not that we know everything all the time in the same way as God. We know each step in each moment. So we give our free will back to God. Our ability, our sacred masculine, is the ability to recognize the choiceless choice, which is why be the only one seeing what I need to do next when you can give that to the only perspective in the universe that knows precisely how to move you. And then your heart connection is what connects you to that. So God steps towards you in an experience, and your heart recognizes that connection, and then your mind works with that in a process ongoing. So you begin to put the words to it. So you're brought through a direct experience of living through the process in a way that God can't, because God is one. So that's the whole purpose of self-aware life. So it's not like God becomes redundant. In fact, it's the exact opposite. That we've been disconnected from God. We get reconnected from the true nature of God. Religion's out of the way and ideologies are out of the way. Now your heart can say this way, and your mind will describe why in time, in real time, and put together the necessary plans, figure things out in the 3D. Your mind will receive the reason why it's the right step in time over time.
Okay, excellent. So let me get to Kirsty's questions, because I think they might bring us backwards a little bit simply because of the discussion we've been having. But the first one, she says, going back before the interference, what was the original purpose of Earth? Does Gareth have any knowledge on the very beginning before the interference? Is Earth an experiment as such? And those of the interference, did they mess the experiment up?
Great question. That's the big picture.
So Okay, so it does go back a little bit, things we've touched on, but the way it's put, I think it's good. And then the next question's really, really good. I think everybody will love the next one.
All right, well, I'll try and do this one succinctly. The human race was created from the ground up as a trap for those of the interference. So the entire planet was put together as to lay the foundation for that.
So wait, so that means there was no planet Earth before the interference. So
Yeah.
so there is no purpose of Earth other than the home for humanity, which was the bait and trap for those of the interference. So it's all connected. There was no
Yes.
Earth experiment other than the trapping of those of the interference.
Except
Okay.
that
Okay.
what Earth can be free of that slavery is what comes next. It's funny. It's almost like the other way around. So you could say yes, there is because someone asked Tom in the book, The Only Planet of Choice, what's the fundamental problem facing humanity at this time? And his answer was the ego that controls, lack of a belief in an absolute reality, and they're connected. Lack of a belief in an absolute reality. One of the things Ramana said about humanity is the truth of who you are is untouched by any of it. So when the way to be free of this pain and suffering is to recognize that the one who's in pain and suffering doesn't exist. It's all a figment of our imagination. Tough one. But so there is a natural state to planet Earth and humanity free of those of the interference, which would look a particular way. And Atlantis, in a way, represented that because it's the same of all civilizations. There's a divine order to civilization. So all civilizations on all planets take on that form in whatever version of that they need to take on. But there's balance. It was balanced. And then it was thrown out of balance. But it was created in order to lure those of the interference into a trap and then pull the whole thing together. And now what comes next is an explosion of color and light. Tom said the song of the universe will erupt in your heart. And the renaissance that's coming once this all flips over is mind-blowing.
Mind-blowing. Right. We there's no reference for it. We can't comprehend it. It's just going to be magical. Yeah. Which is, I just got Sonia says, LOL, we are the honeypot.
Yes.
And Lindsay says, we're the bait. But yeah, we're the bait. That's very funny. So, Kirsty's next question. So, if there is always dark and light, dark is an absence of light, can this happen again? And you have told me since the day I met you that this can never happen again. Talk about that, please.
Now, why did they put together what the dynamic of the trap for those of the interference? Why was the planet put together as the most biodiverse planet in the universe with the most racially diverse race in the universe, a conglomerate of many thousands of ET worlds, species put their genetic material into creating the planet Earth? It was the grand experiment has been spoken about from different ET channels. That's really what this has been all about. Now, why did they make it the most physically dense level, the most biodiverse level, the most racially diverse level? Why? What about that makes it the trap? Well, it's because there's nowhere left to go. There's nowhere because of the nature of collective consciousness, if one race that's connected to all the collective consciousness of the entire galaxy wakes up to the truth in the middle of the lie of those of the interference at the most physically dense level, there's nowhere left for them to go. There's nowhere left for them to hide. We see through every single trick in the book. I mean, how did it work in Atlantis? Some people were tricked into believing the lie because they didn't fully understand what they were looking at.
But we will
fully understand because they hadn't quite experienced it at this level. That's the thing about the most physically dense. We were open to being manipulated in a way that meant that our power could be bypassed. our power and perception, which was massive, could still be bypassed. Well, now we're coming back up to that power and perception, having seen through all of it. And Ramana made the comment: this is what happens when you become back up to self-aware. In the process of enlightenment is exactly the same process. He said, when you know your own mind, you know all minds. So we master the dark side of the human shadow side and come back to the Nazarene, the truth. We go through it all. We see through it all. There's no way that lie can exist anymore in the universe in that form. And that's why it was done, because they were throwing the balance of the universe out. And the whole point is to correct that imbalance so the entire universe will feel it. You know, God made the comment to me, all eyes are on earth, like the entire universe is. And he said that no other civilization, the manner of this transition of humanity has never been done before in the history of the universe. So it's very powerful, and it can never, ever, ever happen again, not in this form. And we go out into the universe with that knowledge.
No, that's an excellent answer. That's an excellent answer. Mike, of course, comes in with a funny comment. Being the bait hasn't been an enjoyable experience. He's so funny. But then Jill says, I heard in the Bible the word discern is used 16,000 times.
Ooh, sacred number.
I know. I like that. I like that. And then Lindsay says light is only found in the dark. Oh, and Donna asks, is Gareth saying Earth is a soul trap?
It's a soul trap. It was set up to defeat the soul trap. The soul trap is a strategy those of the interference use, what God called the bottlenecking of souls. So by creating the fundamental nature of the mind control setup, like this false paradigm that we live in, the fundamental foundation layer of it is the false perception that the fundamental nature of polarity is conflict. That the only way to resolve problems is to remove the conflict with what's in front of you by removing what's in front of you. In reality, the actual fundamental nature of polarity is unity. You can't have a whole without both sides of you need both sides of the coin to have one coin. That distortion. What that did is it meant we were fighting each other. All the conflict playing out in the world. It's all just a product of that mind control belief. So the ramifications of the collapse of the COVID narrative means we can say finally, love and light, brother, sister, you're not the problem. There's not a single line of polarity. That's the knock-on effect. Well, what that created was this karmic loop, which isn't supposed to happen. You're born as a soul into a light space vehicle to have an experience which allows your soul to evolve and move through a process. You move in and out of different lives on different planets to have different sets of experience that all move your soul through a higher, more and more direct experience. It means your soul evolves, basically comes back into unity with God over a process. You're not supposed to come into a life repeatedly to fix problems you caused in the previous life. That was done by those of the interference. Remember, what's their goal? Why are they doing all of this? They're looking for a way to make the transition with you, which is this point now. They're trying to find a way to get us to choose to allow them to run our body instead of God, to sever our heart connection to God and give it to them. And that way they've done that is to keep us in a holding pattern for 12,500 years with this karma, the bottlenecking of soul. So we've had to keep on coming back. Think of all the bad things people have done. When you die, you see you get a life review, you see, whoa. So as a soul, you have to go back and fix it somehow. And then you get caught up again and again and again and again. Well, that's breaking. That's a big part of why the 4 pillars of the transition exist the way they do. Generational trauma. There's a lot coming out. There's a lot to that, so we can talk more about that.
Sam says Atlantis fell because they didn't do the work we are needing to do now in order to move through what was meant to be moved through at Atlantis. It's as if that door is not merely closed, it's gone.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, in one way, it's exactly like Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader, the relationship between Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader in Star Wars. Now, just to clarify, Star Wars was given to Lucas by God, by Tom. It was a soul contract. God called Star Wars the story of the universe. So there are all sorts of analogies and archetypes throughout Star Wars, the script and the characters. So Anakin Skywalker, the chosen one, chosen to bring balance back to the Force, humanity put together in order to bring balance back to the universe, the Force, the creative force that creates the universe, which has been out of balance. So Anakin Skywalker is that. So that's who we were in Atlantis. And you could say that, he lost his love, his connection to love, which is represented by Padme, his wife, who was pregnant, being killed, but in childbirth. And so he's angry at God and he becomes Darth Vader. And you could say, well, he's left his soul purpose. Oh, he instead of fulfilling his soul purpose, because you've got an idea of what that looks like when you see Anakin Skywalker and you hear those words, the chosen one, and he looks like he's the chosen one. So you think, oh, that's what it looks like. We're taught to be linear, so we move in a straight line. We think we know what that's going to lead to and how it's going to look, and it's all in a straight line. We don't think laterally. That maybe the fact that he's gone the exact opposite direction is him fulfilling his soul purpose, and that's precisely what him becoming Darth Vader was all about. So yes, we lost our connection, but that's the entire reason we were fulfilling our soul purpose as a race to bring balance back to the universe, was to go into the dark side of the ego, Darth Vader.
Come on.
And who's the one who ends who's the one who kills the Emperor? Darth Vader. Mm-hmm. He reconnects to love through his son.
Through his son.
Luke Skywalker. And right at the end, he's finally clicking. He's looking at the Emperor, who's convincing Luke to kill his father, take your place by my side, and together we'll be more powerful than you can possibly imagine. In other words, complete that free will choice. If he kills his father, that's a symbol of disconnecting from God. Because without God, you can't exist. That's your source. So you invert. So in order to exist, you have to be connected to the dark side, and you make them exist.
So Sam clarified what she meant. She meant the door to the past is what she meant. Like, we can't make these mistakes again. That door is closed. Yeah.
Yes.
So
we see through it.
Yeah, we see through it. So just a couple more from Kirsty. She had dinner with a friend, and the dinner turned into a debate about God, spirituality, how Trump is the devil, all that stuff. He's ruining the USA. It's so hard to see how these people will awaken. Does Gareth think the mainstream media will be taken over to get the truth out? And yeah, exactly. But there are those, and I believe Tarot by Janine being one of them, who believes it's already being controlled by the white hats, right?
Yep.
That what is coming out might look like it's the same old shit, but it's very orchestrated drops of, we have to see the dark. We have to be not necessarily outraged. We have to see things. So they can't just take down the mainstream media and say lollipops and gumdrops and rainbows and butterflies. Right.
Yeah,
that's not how.
Oh, good again. No. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
that's right. I mean,
you think mainstream media is?
It's the key, because the main strategy is they take control of the narrative. Those are the interference. They take control of the narrative so that they can actually form our viewpoint. They can control our viewpoint, how we see reality through the media. And that's become more complex throughout thousands of years of process, particularly since 47. So the media and Hollywood all came out into very high form in the 50s. Post World War II was a real turning point, because we chose centralized control systems on a level that hadn't existed before globally. UN, World Economic Forum, WHO, a whole lot of stuff came out, and they were able to take what the fascist stuff was all about and expand it globally. because we
Right,
allowed
but
it to happen.
they sold it to us in the guise of helping humanity,
Yeah,
United Nations, right?
that's
And the
right.
World Health Organization and CDC and like World
Yeah,
Economic Forum. Like,
yes,
yeah, it was just sold to us with all this bullshit.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to see. And that's, when the thing in the Old Testament about the fourth beast shall rise from the sea, being corporations and a legal system around the law of the high seas, which is piracy, which is admiralty law, which is set up through the British Empire to resolve border disputes between all the different empires, Spanish, French. So they came up with 1 mile territorial waters and delineated land, or they came up with a second system, which was separate from common law, the law of land, the law of the high seas, attached corporations to that, which meant they were a law unto themselves. And then gradually they've been taking over the world through this corporate system since the 40s, and that process has been very gradual. But that has to make its final move, and that's what's been playing out. The mainstream media is their key mechanism that they use to sell the lie. So, of course, that can't happen unless someone buys the lie. So that's why we have to see it. We have to see the whole thing has to be shown. So a lot of this stuff, it was a cue drop years ago. You were watching a movie. We saved the mainstream media till last. We saved Israel till last. And there's a direct connection between the mainstream media and Mossad, which is the
Yes.
Israeli intelligence agency, and
Oh
and
yeah.
the the group behind the infiltration, those are the interference. Their biggest point of infiltration is the Hebrew, because the Hebrew are a microcosm of the human race, just like the human race are a microcosm of the galaxy, and they have an extremely powerful role. But this group aren't Jewish. They're not Jewish.
Right.
Those are the
Exactly.
interference.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
That whole thing, what that if it's it's socially engineered, the whole
Yeah.
anti-Semite thing and all of that. Yeah, yeah.
But
Um
we have to see the PSYOP and the UN, and we've got to know that anything they name, flip it there. You look at everything they've named it and put the opposite name there. The
right.
disunity of
Right.
nations,
It is
the
truly
world,
an inversion. Yeah.
the World Disease
World
Organization.
Sickness Organization, World Poverty or Forum. Right, right,
Yeah,
right. Divided nation. Like
yeah,
really
exactly.
put the opposite term
Yeah,
to everything.
exactly.
Oh, I love that. That's so funny. We've
Catholic,
never said that one before. That's fun.
Catholic Church, one
We could
religion
go.
to unite them all. Centralization of power, slavery.
Right, right. Okay, so that brings me to Kirsty's last question, which you touched on a little bit because it's all connected, all the dots. Can Gareth explain the history behind what's happening in the Middle East? Why is the ground there so sacred? What's the fighting about and why? Hebrews, Persians, the connection to the spiritual war. I mean, she wants the whole shebang.
Great
But
question
she
again,
can't
because
say
this.
I didn't ask for her.
Yes, no. Well, again, I'll try and be succinct because there's a multi. I mean, we could go on for an entire series of shows just about that. Well, look back at Abraham, the father of Ishmael and Israel. So the Arab nation come from Ishmael, and the Jewish come from Israel, but their father is Abraham. Now that gets back to the seeding of planet Earth, because of course once we fell from Atlantis, we didn't have the capacity to think about things in the way we can now. High technology. You couldn't just say, oh, yeah, there was this ET Galactic Federation that used genetic engineering to put together a single race to someone in Persia in like 6,000 years ago. They'd be like, what? How do you keep that knowledge alive as a thread all the way through history? You have to put it into analogies, a code, the book sealed until the end of time. So there's a lot of imagery in there. Well, this Abraham thing gets to the one point of origin, what Tom called he called the originals and the pioneers mixing. So the sons of God mixing with the daughters of man. this sort of seeding process. The Aboriginals of Australia connect to the originals in the most powerful way. They're the homeopathic, the clearest homeopathic um, element of the originals of planet Earth. Their culture goes back 100,000 years plus. So there'd been one line of continuity, the only one on the planet, the only single
Right.
race that has a single memory. So they have this thing called the Dreamtime stories. Dreamtime meaning astral, connection to the fifth dimension. The Nazarene came to Australia and spoke to them directly about what will play out. They know about the soul group, the four, the whole thing. That's why there was an Aboriginal elder with the Arcturians when they showed themselves to me. So that all gets back. So Ishmael and Israel, this brothers fighting brothers, represents the first point of turning polarity from unity into conflict. So the Arab nations were like there's elements within, particularly Saudi Arabia, that are dark, like really satanic, very, very dark. Same as within Israel, very, very dark. All the same thing.
Yep.
Like think the Nazis in their worst form, think Caligula in the Roman Empire in its worst form. Satanic. And they're designed to, and that's what's going on in Iran right now. What played out in Iran, there are ethnic groups all the way through the Arab world that aren't necessarily Arab, and the Iranian people, the original Iranians represent that. There are elements within Iraq, that's why they hit Iraq, the Kurds, many ethnic minorities that act as bridges between the Hebrew and the Arab, the Ishmael. So they have an interconnectedness that joins them together. So what those of the interference have been trying to do is keep them separate, because if they come together, the power of that connection is massive. And that's why one of the big strategies they've been using right now in the immigration strategy is to try to keep that racial inflammation alive by
Yeah.
firstly they radicalize the Arab nations are very susceptible to this because of their nature. It's almost like Israel, the Ishmael, and the Arab nations and the Hebrew nations are kind of two sides of the same coin. The Israelis are very powerful in the mind and they have a very deep spiritual connection, but that can be manipulated and they can get in their own way. But they tend to go cold or they tend to shut down and isolate themselves, whereas the Arabs are very hot and fiery. So they're more susceptible to have the same trauma, but it'll express it in an external way, in a fiery way. So they're being used through, if you put a child through trauma, then that's going to play out as an adult. So they're very susceptible to being radicalized. So this whole thing with Sharia law, which puts women in slavery. So they've been put into cultures all around the world, Australia, in order to create cultural genocide and destabilize all the societies. Britain, Europe, Australia, they're going through a process right now of trying to destabilize society, get rid of the middle class, and then destabilize our society so they collapse. And that's what happened to a lot of the Arab nations. And it's what's been going on for thousands and thousands of years in the Arab nations. This strategy those of the interference use to infiltrate with radicalization, traumatize the population, and then shut them down. So it's why the Iranian Revolution happened in Iran. I mean, look at the place before they turned up. It was amazing. Same with Lebanon during the 30s. If you had gone to those areas in the 30s, it was the cultural hub, the art, the work, the place was incredible. And of course, they come in and completely destroy it. And that has to be seen by
that that has to be seen. Talk about
by
going
them.
through by exactly. Could you imagine? That's a heavy thing.
So they were the
look at.
beginning point. Right, exactly. They were the beginning point. Once Atlantis fell and civilization started to come up, and that was the main area. Egypt, North Africa, the Arab world was where high civilization was most susceptible to coming back up. So that was the beginning point of keeping this bottlenecking of soul strategy alive. Divide and conquer by making polarity about conflict instead of unity. So that played out at its most purest form between the Arabs and the Israelis, the Jewish. And then it's just been made bigger and wider because the
Yeah.
Arabs, the Jewish are one race, one group, but they're multiple ethnicities at the same time. And being Jewish is passed on through the feminine line. In order to be Jewish, if your mother is Jewish and your father isn't, you're Jewish. So it operates in the right. That's the divine order because that's the way life is. It starts female and becomes male.
Everything's been distorted. Just everything.
Yeah. So the Arab nations have been put into the opposite. They've been programmed to think that males are superior to females, Sharia law. So they're going to come back together. So yeah, they're the
Yeah.
beginning point of that divide and conquer strategy, and that's why they're being used right now.
Um, okay, so Sonia says there have been a few references to what we've been talking about from, I think, Donna and Sonia to Dolores Cannon and the book she's written. Like, she channeled some real truth. I think the Convoluted Earth series is what Donna brought up, but then Sonia says, Dolores Cannon wrote about the Antichrist. Is there one, and does it matter?
Okay, well, we'll get to yes. Now that's a good question. I just want to finish, and it connected one part of the previous question.
Oh,
What
I'm
is it
sorry.
about
I
that?
didn't even know I
No, you're right.
interrupted.
Right.
I'm sorry.
No, you
Okay.
didn't. No, you didn't. I didn't. I forgot about it until you started mentioning it.
Okay.
I suddenly remembered. Oh, that's right. Why is that part of that Middle East area? What's important about it? One thing is you might have heard of Megiddo, a place called Megiddo,
How do you
which is
spell that?
Megiddo. Megiddo. It's connected to. It's where Armageddon was meant to happen, the battle between good and evil, a
Okay.
long time ago. So if you go there, it's silent and still. Like the energy there is incredible. But it's really still and silent. It's like there's a bubble around it. Well, the Ark of the Covenant is there, and yes, it's real. And the whole point of that. There's a platform which God said is buried under the earth right now, but um, that's where you could connect. He said we can take the form of the physical if it's necessary. Well, that actually happened in Megiddo. So God came into the physical and connected with elements from the Ishmael and from the Hebrew and this sort of group that came out of Atlantis that was sort of given the charged with keeping the knowledge of who we were alive. So the Hall of Records, there's all sorts of stuff connected to Megiddo. There's places in Iraq that are very, very important. So there's a reality to what played out because in the time of Atlantis, and the Sphinx was built for God. What I experienced when I spoke to God directly was something you could do. There was a lot of the technology and the ancient structures that are connected to the planet's frequency, and they're built in a particular way because they add other frequencies or they combine frequencies like an orchestra. You can use that technology to connect directly to source in a very physical way. So you can speak with God. So the Sphinx was part of that, the pyramid, the Giza Plateau. There were other parts of what came out of Atlantis that are all connected to that throughout the Middle East. And they've all been kept. Tom said all the knowledge of that, it is not being kept in vain. That's one of the big reasons the Catholic, once Rome converted to so-called Christianity, they went right through the Middle East, and the French went through it was all those of the interference. The French, the Spanish, the British, all these different empires went right through the Middle East to sack them. They were looking for all these artifacts. So there's a direct connection to 3 motherships that left Mars when it was destroyed. Greenland, Atlantis, and the Middle East. The technology that was utilized by those from those motherships is what was used to create Atlantis. So there's a direct connection between all of that, the geography of the Middle East, what came out of it
Yeah.
through the conflict between the Arab and Israeli, etc. And the knowledge of that will come out. So 2026, 2027, it's all there in the Vatican libraries. It's everywhere. And
Yeah.
direct open contact will help us put it all together.
Yeah. Yeah. Hold on a second. Mind blown. Todd just said, best show yet. And earlier he was like, fuck yeah, we got this. He's so funny. We got this shift. He says, boom. And no judgment, no harm, no foul. Todd's so funny. Um, there was an analogy earlier, Sam said, that got a whole bunch, like, this is painfully long, this process for like the humans, right? And she says, I feel like when we get there, it'll be like childbirth, the most unimaginable, seemingly never ending labor, and just right. And then she says,
Yes.
needless to say, I was the woman you could hear through the entire hospital swearing and screaming uncontrollably. And Mike says, without an epidural. And Sam says, one very loud hospital with all of us right about now. Oh my God, they're so funny. They're so fun. Oh my God. And Lindsay, oh my God, deep conscious breathing all day. All day. Lindsay's kid says, will you stop breathing? Well, I don't think you actually want me to stop breathing, she tells her kids. Sam looks forward to the time when so funny. Sam says she looks forward to the time when all that is being ignored is no longer able to be hidden. It seems impossible here now, but we trust it's a matter of inevitability. And Anne says it feels really close. Hold on. Sam says the three waves, I think our grandparents and parents were first wave. We fall under second, third-ish wave. And then Sam says, Katie, imagine if Sarah was first wave and didn't even know it until you woke it up in her, making you second wave. What do you think about that? Those waves of,
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, it's like a ripple effect. And again, the collapse of the mainstream media is critical because, again, someone was saying one part of one of the questions was all the people out there who just swear blind that there's nothing to any of this and COVID's real and blah blah blah. They don't seem to be budging, and it's hard to imagine what would make them do that. But again, the COVID reality that COVID was a lie pulled off on a global scale, and that the only reason that they were able to pull it off was because enough people bought the lie. That exposes the fact that there is a they with an agenda and that it was a conspiracy to pull off that agenda. And if that's true, what else have they lied about? And that's why the Arcturians pointed it out to me in the beginning of 2019. They wanted me to point my attention. This is how they operate. They don't give you all the answers. They just point your attention in a certain direction. They said at the start of 2019, the final point of their plan is their most vulnerable point. It will undo problem reaction. They will lose control of the narrative. This will undo divide and conquer through problem reaction solution. So the way they use the media to control our perception of reality to get us to choose their plan, which is what destroys our life. That means that there's not a single belief in anyone's belief system that they can actually get away with saying it's true, and they'll know it.
Yep. And boy, oh boy, do we all have people with some big, loud egos who are going to go down kicking and screaming. Hold on. Lizard Queen asks, what about the Dolores Cannon Antichrist question? Like, that did not get answered clearly.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, the one that fell is who she's talking about, but firstly,
but sorry to interrupt. I just want to throw this out because maybe you can talk more on that. But there are people who say like Barack Obama is the Antichrist. And like they throw these public figures into the ring as being, well, I think he's the Antichrist. There's also, people with the whole Trump derangement syndrome who say Trump's the Antichrist. Like, okay, so now you can go and answer.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the Antichrist, what you could call the Antichrist, is the inversion itself, the inversion of the universe. So it's way bigger than any person on this planet.
It's like an energy.
It's the Emperor in Star Wars. It's an energy. It's an archetype, and it's in fact, in reality, God's favorite angel sits at the right hand of God, which is an analogy for the left brain, the ego. So without self-aware life, the universe can't exist. So the first point that had to have a point of origin. So there was the first thought, I, and that's what the one that fell came from. That thought, I. But the ego that controls, it wanted to control how reality operated in order to keep it separate and eternal. The only way the ego can be eternal is if it surrenders itself back to source, back to its source. So you give your free will back. That's a threshold. That the fear is what fear can take hold in that moment is if you do that, you'll lose yourself, which isn't actually true. But the only way to know that is to let go of who you are fully. So you let the ego dissolve back into source. It's the only way to know that you can never be separate from God, but you always can experience the all it is in any given moment. So that's the Nazarene. So the ego in service to self, the highest archetype of the ego, sits at the right hand of God, which is left brain. The left hand of God is right brain. So that's how the body works. So it's a belief, not a reality. The one that fell is a belief, just like the false persona of Gareth or Katie. It's built on the belief that you aren't right as you are. So in reality, all the problems that you have are created by a mistake, by an assumption. We misunderstood a situation and we created this whole false persona around it we call us. So in reality, those problems can't exist because the one who has them doesn't exist. And it's the same with the one that fell. And that gets back to the human race and the importance of what's happening right now. The one that fell can't exist in that form anymore in the universe.
So there isn't a walking, talking, breathing Antichrist right now that we can point at and say,
let's put it this way. There is, let's say, how do I put this? Darkness is an absence of light, but if you think it's something, your creative energy can turn it into something. So the only reason there's a physicality to the one that fell is because there are enough self-aware life forms that believe that darkness has form. And the importance of the human race is, for the first time in the history of the universe, a race at the foundation level of the universe sees through that lie. So the knock-on effect throughout the universe, that'll ripple up throughout the universe, which means that can't exist in that form anymore. So the one that fell, just like the ego, what happens to the ego that controls? Fear. It's based on fear and self-doubt. When you realize that that's not true, where does it go? It just returns to its form, to its natural state, which is doesn't exist. It's not real.
right,
It's just like fear of flying. There's flying and then there's fear of flying. You can experience flying through fear of flying, but what's real? Fear of flying is a belief about flying. It's not flying.
yeah,
Fear that you aren't right as you are is a belief about who you are, but it's not who you are.
yeah. It's so funny.
Expression of that.
It's so funny being the human Katie and imagining living out the rest of my life without the story of Katie being real. It's like a concept I can't quite grasp. You know what I mean?
You have to experience it directly, because it's all we've ever known, and we were too young
Right.
to understand. If you had the sophistication of mind now that you have now, back at that first point where you were pulled into self doubt, it wouldn't have happened. It couldn't have happened because you would have realized what was happening, but you were too young. So what happened is you believed it. You believe that you aren't worthy of love as you are, and you've got to be someone. So you become that someone you think you've got to be. That's the ego that controls, and that's made in the image and likeness of God is the truth of who we are. The ego that controls is the inversion of that. It follows the pattern of the one that fell. So just like the ego that controls is a distortion, it's an idea about the nature of who we are. It's not the truth of who we are, it's an idea about it. The one that fell is the same. So yes, you can relate to the one that fell in physical form to a degree, but that physicality only exists because of our power to believe it exists.
Right.
So once we see through the lie, that can't
Yeah.
exist in that form.
It can't exist in that form anymore. Right. That's just so empowering.
Ego
That's
death.
very exciting. I attended a Zoom today with Heart Coherence Collaborative with Martha. I'm shifting gears here with Martha Alter Hines, and she channeled an inner mountain society, a being, and brought us through this inner mountain journey. And you have talked to me before about I think it was some Atlanteans who, when the fall of Atlantis, some went underground. There are civilizations underground, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a fantastic call with Kyle. Martha Alter Hines. She's fantastic if nobody here has heard of her. Oh my goodness. Because the whole center of the earth being molten lava is just basically a lie as big as landing on the moon. It's like a load of shit. It's like so funny. I mean, I want the unicorns to be flying around right now. So you know what I mean? Like she talked about her being in, I don't know if it was social work in 2018, and she had 8 beings that just appeared around her and basically gave her soul purpose and told her what she was going to be doing, and she was going to be channeling, and within 2 months she was channeling. And
Wow.
she's just this oh, I know. And she left her work, and she has a free community. She has an app, and I've never like met her. I'm not selling anything. It felt so good. And it was such a nice, I don't know, nice, different, non-egoic experience. It was so really, really lovely. I'd love to hear more about Inner Earth and beings and the Atlanteans duck and cover in the center of the earth. I mean, do you know more about all of that?
Yeah, well, that had to happen because of what the destruction event, the nature of it, and for instance, all the Göbekli Tepe. There's lots of massive, which is a huge. There's Göbekli Tepe. There's lots of different tepes. They're all deliberately buried. The same with the parts of different structures in ancient Egypt. They were deliberately buried at a particular time to spare them from the impact of that destruction event because it was known ahead of time. There was a group that caused the fall, but then of course there was a whole group that could see what was playing out. And that was part of the purpose of the civilization of humanity fulfilling its purpose was to preserve all of that knowledge that was there. So that group went underground because, again, the destruction event itself, it was massive. There were earthquakes, tidal waves, the solar flare that pretty much wiped out. I mean, it was hot enough to melt stone, and that caused a big knock-on effect around the world. That all the weather patterns changed. It took a century for the light to come back, more than a century. You couldn't basically survive above ground. You had to go underground. Or a lot went into mountain ranges, including the one those of the interference. There were some parts of the European mountains that the dark side went into, and that's why you see them come out. There's, for instance, within the Balkans and within the parts of the Alps. So Austria, and there's different parts that were dark and light all around the world. And the highest version went underground. Yeah, so what they have is what we had in Atlantis.
So, so back to Kirsty's question about the Middle East and why is the land so sacred? And, everyone talks about, portions of California and Sedona being sacred and Israel being sacred and over here being sacred. But I did a meditation years ago, early in my, you know what? I don't even think it was a meditation early. I feel like it was Kyle Cease. Mike, you might know, and you might be able to tell me if I'm wrong. It was, I just clocked it that they said everything is sacred. Like everyone wants to make these pockets of land and these areas as these sacred, special, unique places. Like, meanwhile, we're 10,000 miles away from this sacredness. But then I think in this talk, Kyle, or I don't know, I might be remembering wrong, it doesn't really matter, just said everything you're standing on is sacred.
So true.
Right?
Yeah. And I mean,
That felt way more true. But is the importance of those lands being sacred, are they really more sacred than anything else, or is that all part of the inversion? You know what I'm asking? Am I asking it
sure.
wrong?
No, I know what you're asking. Yeah. I mean, look, there are, you know, there are ley lines all around the planet, but there are also points where they intersect, and there are certain points where two intersect, and there are certain points where you'll have multiple intersections. So some of them, and there's a relationship between the ones that only have two and the ones that have multiple. So there's a balance of energy around the planet, and some of them that have multiple, they're at certain points on the planet. So if the nature of the rock is a certain type, it has high quartz, and there are intersecting ley lines. Let's say there are three of them. That the energy relationship between all of those will be different. Of, let's say, within Australia, where you might have the same thing, three intersecting, but the nature of the bedrock is different. So it has a different frequency range. But the sum total of all of them is necessary. But some of them are like dimensional portals, and they're important because they interact. We can interact with different races, and there are sometimes there's a need because different races come from different frequencies, and this is the most physically dense. So for some races to exist on this planet, it's quite difficult for them because the mismatch between the frequency of this planet and theirs and the dimensional difference. So there's a role for that particularly in those areas of the Middle East. And don't forget, after the fall, civilization wasn't all over the planet in the same way. So that was a concentrated area. So there was a role for it at that point. Now that's changed over the course of history. It was different over the course of history. Yeah. So it needed to be preserved in certain ways. Also, the Nazarene 2,000 years ago, Tom said about the lost years, it was necessary for his energy to circle the globe. So he went round the world and he came to America, North America, South America. He came to Australia. He went through Southeast Asia. He went all around the planet, and he reintegrated that system of energy grid, in the form it was in before the fall. And he set up like let's say there were two that existed parallel. There's the interference, frequency of the interference, and the effect that had on the ley lines around the planet. There's a wobble, the way the Earth moves. There's a frequency that shouldn't exist. And he put another one around. He wrapped around that, the original frequency. And then, of course, when he was executed, he took the truth of who we are into our collective consciousness. And there's a direct connection between all of them. And the ley lines in the Middle East, because of the role they play in how long this strategy's been playing out, they're very important because of that. The energy that was there before Atlantis fell is inherent within those concentrated portals, let's call them, in different parts of the Middle East. Also, the interference of that is at its most original point. Plus, Egypt is a direct connection to Atlantis. They have a lot of that. There was a lot of direct connection to Atlantis, particularly different pharaohs like Akhenaten and there was
Yep.
some of the structures were deliberately built on certain points. So they're the sort of first place that happened. But then there are other places, say in Australia and North America, which were very critical, but they represent the originals, remember the originals and the pioneers, the extraterrestrial side of the seeding of planet Earth, and the original hominid that came up out of the mammals that were evolving on planet Earth. There had to be a light space vehicle that evolved directly from the planet first. That the genetic the other civilizations around the galaxy could connect to. That had to be also be there. They couldn't just come in and put. So the Aboriginal culture represent that, and they're directly connected to the Native American cultures. So the Nazarene went to America. He met with a whole series of councils of elders across America, and they have records of all of this. And he described them precisely what would happen. So the same process the Roman Empire went through: republic turned into totalitarian system of the empire. He described that. He said, and he described it to them directly, same pattern, because it was playing out in real time at that time in Rome. That's why he materialized there. So he described to them that it was the same thing would happen and that they would see it come and go. He said, "You will see America come and go." The America he was talking about isn't the Republic of America, it's the totalitarian system, which is what's being destroyed right now. So it's an
Right.
extension of Armageddon. It's like the first Armageddon in Megiddo is playing out. The end game of that Armageddon is playing out in America right now. And he came to Australia and said the same thing. There's a connection between Australia and America. The ley line portals in America that directly connect to the center of the earth and to the Middle East, and the ley lines in Australia that connect to the center of the earth and the middle of Middle East. It's massive. I could go on. I could go on
I
all
know
day
you
for
could.
the.
I know you could. The information you have is just staggering. But when I asked that question about the sacredness of the land, um, Todd chimed in and said, all of her is sacred. And,
It's everywhere.
and yeah, yeah. And Anne said, it's all sacred. It just has different, you know,
It's
you know,
exactly
purposes and yeah.
there are different frequencies of energy in around the planet that add up to the whole, but you need each one to play its part, and the whole planet's been put out of balance. So each one needs to be put in back into balance in the right order. So that's the importance of the Middle East. The
Yeah.
Middle East, Israel, all has to be dealt with first properly. Then the knock-on effect of that around the world is huge, because
This
that was the
is
original
just
point.
all of it is
That's all.
huge. All of it is huge. All of it is huge. It's like, what do you do with this stuff?
Yeah, look, there are a lot of gaps in our understanding, and it's a tough one, but that'll all be brought together.
That'll all be brought together, but that's exactly you and I have talked about this many times. The gaps in their understanding. 3 people that I have followed with big followings that I listen to this day. Only 3 people have ever come close to what you know in my book, and that's David Clements, Pam Gregory, and Martha Alter Hines. Maybe Alexander Quinn. I don't really know. I don't think I follow him closely enough, but I really do enjoy listening to him. But David Clements and Martha and Pam, they're the closest to me. I know Martha when she speaks about talking with David Clements. Her eyes get big and she gets very excited because he's had almost the exact same experiences she has had. And that's what happened to me the first time ever I heard him speak. It was, oh my God, it's another Gareth. Like that's how big this whole thing is, right? Like the dots are being connected and the frequency of all of us in our truth seeking and our compassion and our open hearts and our love for love is magnetizing bringing in all of this. It's bringing
Yeah,
in all of this.
yeah, in a huge way, and connecting the dots too. I mean, there's things that David Clements knows that I don't. I mean, he has a specific um, area or field, and I have mine. But when they connect, then that's really something. And the same all around the world. You know, we all have different roles to play, and but bringing it all together, that's
I
going to be
think
really something.
I think you could get their attention in an email. I swear to God. You could get their attention with some things you say in an email because, the overlapping information is undeniable.
Sure.
And we are all puzzle pieces in
Hmm.
all of this. What's that
Yeah,
noise?
yeah, definitely. It's an aeroplane passing over a propeller
Oh,
plane,
that's what
light
I thought it
aircraft.
was. That's what I thought it was. We've had a lot of interference. The camera has skipped a few times, and
It's
Mike said,
been
"I think somebody's trying to interfere with this transmission."
it's been really blurry at times.
Hasn't it? And it's skipped on the video too. And I've lost some of the things you said, but it's all right. I'll get it somewhere in some other time. Um,
It's a shame too. We need to get back on Zoom. No, we can't. Can we? Todd needs this platform. Yeah, thanks, Katie. Well, I think there's this year from the twentieth onwards, because that was something I was going to say about the importance of Neptune and Saturn connecting on the 20th of February, and then of course we kick into the Chinese New Year. 2025 officially finishes on I think the 21st, so we actually get into 2026 properly. And right on 0 degrees Aries, Neptune and Saturn connect, and that's extremely important. Like all the twin flame soulmates are um, connected by Saturn and Neptune. He's usually Neptune, she's usually Saturn, which is the opposite. Saturn's quite a masculine energy, and Neptune's quite a feminine energy in some ways. But the thing about Neptune is is mastering the illusion, and in the shadow side, it can be delusional. You go off into a dream world as a way to escape reality. So for that reason, Neptune and Saturn are often seen as being not very good together, because Saturn wants to go, get focus on being real and get onto something that will bring you through the right process, and it's very tangible and physical and grounded in reality. Whereas Neptune can be seen as being, wishy-washy and delusional. But in reality, when you master the illusion of separation, which is what the universe is, there is only one energy, and it's all an illusion for a particular purpose. Then physical structure comes from that. Then it's in its sacred form. So bringing them together in equal partnership is exactly the same thing as the transition, precisely the same thing as the transition itself. So it marks the beginning point of the paradigm shift massively, 0 degrees Aries. So our entire civilization, everything that plays out from then onwards, March, April, right through, is all about the collapse of the old paradigm and the rebuilding, putting it all back together the way it always should have been.
right.
So this paradigm shift is showing up physically. So a lot of the questions people have had and will start to come together, like the answers will start to
Yeah,
show up to you.
right. The great falling apart and the great coming together.
See, Pam
So,
Gregory and David Clements connecting together to me represent Neptune and Saturn. He's a
yeah,
physicist who's become spiritual, and she's
right.
and she's a spiritualist who's becoming physical. They're
Right.
meeting, by connecting, and one
It's
of the
it's
big
science and
things.
it's a perfect science and spirit, male and female. It's this beautiful
It's playing out
partnership.
everywhere. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
just going to say that one of the big changes will be science and spirituality reconnecting, as they always should have been, which was what created
Yeah.
the Renaissance in Italy.
Huh.
That's why it happened, because people like Da
Right.
Vinci, they were incredible artists and inventors and scientists and mathematicians and physicists and chemists and you name it. One person who was the reason why he was such an incredible artist had a lot to do with why he was such an incredible scientist, which the reason he was such an incredible scientist was because he understood art. Life is art.
Mm-hmm.
There's a real
Mm-hmm.
relationship between the two. So balance coming back, and that's a big part of it. So one of the massive implications of the collapse of the control narrative is the effect it'll have on academia. It'll get this sort of block out of the way, and same for a lot of people on an individual level.
It's so funny. The egoic Katie is sitting here thinking, the Katie who has no skills, no expertise, no nothing. There's no hierarchy. Nobody's better than anyone else. We're all fractals of God. We're all divine and perfect. In the new world, what the hell am I going to do?
See, the thing
Like,
is,
who am I? And what do I do? I don't have any speciality. I got nothing.
that's the, see, again, divide and conquer and conflict. We're taught,
Right?
our viewpoint is in conflict with that way of being. So it's very hard to see how to be that way
Yeah.
because the whole point of
Thank
view
you.
we're trying to look at it through is from the opposite point of view. But that's what collapses. And in reality, just like when I was told life is art, like again, that's how life works. You don't control inspiration. You only control where you put your attention. So you don't know what to do yet. So you put your attention on waiting. You let your mind wander, and then inspiration comes, like a bolt of lightning, and then so you simply act from inspiration. So there's no conflict with what to do. Just exactly how you operated as a kid. It just happens organically and naturally. You just don't know until you do. Then you do.
Yeah, you sure don't. Todd says, keep doing what you're doing and shine. And Roseanne says, you're great at this. Yeah, but eventually, like, this stuff isn't going to be needed. Like, it's all going to be, like, I just think all the time the transparency and the knowing all the stuff. Okay, so then what is the point of any of this? Like, I
You
know
don't know
that's,
it all at once.
yeah,
You won't know it all at once. And I mean, creativity is infinite too.
yeah.
Plus, you're
Yeah,
born into this.
Sam just said same. I feel like I'll fail at life. It's like I don't necessarily feel like I'll fail at life at all. But I know what she means. Like I don't know. I don't have a thing.
Right. Yeah,
My
exactly. You
thing's
don't have a
silly
thing.
though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a
That's
thing. I
that's
never
the
had a
thing.
thing. I never wanted a thing, except as all of you know, I wanted like 5 babies. And if I could have, I'd have had 10. But then was that my search for love? Was that me? But I feel like I know. We've gone around in circles. I've cried and cried and cried about the babies I didn't have and the babies I lost. But like, I don't know. Like when I think into it, like being pregnant and nursing was the best thing ever. Ever.
Hmm.
Ever, ever. I want to do that professionally until the end of time.
Yeah, but then see, this is the thing. Who are you? Who are you without that first? If you can answer that question, if you can feel that reality, then everything comes from that. But if you can't connect with that reality first, then everything is about replacing that lack.
Yeah.
So your
Yeah.
motivation is your protection in all things, and that's the thing. Your cup runs over. That's what that means. Because you quite often find that for a lot of people, once that phase is over, they're back where they originally were, but in a much more tangible way. It's almost harder because you've found a release or an escape from that emptiness before you're really aware of the emptiness. Whereas once that escape is gone, now you're aware of the emptiness. So by meeting the moment right now with that question, who am I being in this moment? You use the process as a way to come to the truth of who you are. Then what comes out of that is natural, and you're not in conflict with it because it's coming from your higher self and it's
Yes.
bringing
Yeah.
you to your higher self.
You're being lived through instead of dictating life. You're surrendering. You're living in the divine order because God has the highest perspective for you and everything. Ooh, it takes a lot of trust and faith.
Exactly. And that gets back to the core of the whole inversion: self doubt, fear of the unknown. And,
Yeah.
that hides in some very, very cunning places, that self doubt and fear of the unknown. The ego that controls is great at dressing itself up as looking like the opposite. The
I
Roman
know.
Empire dressed itself up as Christianity, and it's a satanic cult.
I keep, I know. I keep wondering, like, all the work I've done, all the surrendering, all the doubt, all the questioning. Like, I was just thinking earlier, I was laughing to myself while you were talking about something about me walking through my house, questioning out loud every thought I have ever, like all day long. Like, this is my job now, to walk around going, is that true? To walk around going, why did you just say that to yourself? To walk around going, why are you thinking that? What are you doing? Who are you? What is
Mm-hmm.
happening? Why did you say that? How do you feel? Why aren't you answering? What is going on? Like, I full-time job questioning all of it. And so, like, and then I think that I'm getting nowhere, and I think, oh my God, what's God gonna wallop me with just so I get somewhere? Like, it's
And you know what the value of that is? Even even though it feels like you're not getting anywhere, but the fact that you're asking those questions, that you've transferred self doubt to doubting the story, even though it feels like you're doubting yourself,
right.
because the story, the one who's asking this, this where the story comes from is the self, the false self. But because you're asking you're questioning now all of that. Who am I being right now? Like, where's that really coming from? Why am I thinking that? La-di-da, whatever form, like all the ways you just described it. What you're doing is questioning the false self. Who are you really? Like, what is this really? And you can't ask a question without receiving the answer. It's just the nature of this question and answer is a complete transformation of your sense of self. So what you've been doing without realizing it is connecting that question, what's the truth? You
Yeah,
hit the wall, you woke up spiritual, you had an awakening, you hit the wall. There's a
yeah,
question, what's the truth? And every time you ask those questions, you question that thought or that belief, or where am I coming from right now? You're taking that right back to that question. And that
yeah,
that question is saying you're giving everything back to source. So that's undoing your entire subconscious connection to this false paradigm. And there's only one net result that can happen: a paradigm shift. That's the moment of enlightenment.
yes,
You've literally,
yes, yes.
when you wake up, the process of
A-
waking up to the truth video is like click.
Yep, everyone, this is resonating with so many in the chat. So many in the chat. Like Karen Wilson says, I'm with you, Katie. And Mike says, I think a lot of us are dealing with our own versions of that, Katie. And Roseanne says, you allow it. And I'm like, yeah, yeah. But Anne said something brilliant, which I have been told since my awakening by my friend Lori. He said, I think you had to be, and I've said this on previous shows, but I think you had to be not directionless necessarily, but you lived your life from your heart from day one and you never stopped. But you didn't look to hone a skill. You didn't look for a job or to be better than anybody. You weren't looking for money. You weren't looking for the perfect relationships. You were just living the way we're supposed to, in a sense, but still not questioning any of it. I believed all of this shit. I believed all of
Yeah.
it. Like, for me to wake up was a fucking miracle. But Anne says, so anyway, Lori said that I had to be so entrenched in the matrix and also never have severed my heart connection ever to be in the place I'm in now. And that's actually more powerful than you can possibly imagine. And then Anne, right? Yeah, yeah. And Anne says, I feel that for some of us, having no direction is setting us up perfectly for being the leaders of what's coming somehow.
Precisely. Now that
No.
that
Isn't she
like everyone on the
smart?
call, totally. We're all going through
Everyone
the
on the
same.
call.
That's
Yes.
like what you described is because I mean, what's the problem? We doubt the truth, that we doubt ourselves. You can't be the truth of who you are and doubt yourself. So it's one or the other. So the self that comes from doubt is all we've ever known because it happened when we were so young. So this personality that formed around that assumption is what we call Gareth, Katie, Mike, and insert name of choice. But it isn't the truth of who we are.
Yeah.
So by doubting that personality, essentially, you're taking self-doubt from the core of who you are to the story about that, the personality that formed from it. Because now you're asking the question, you're doubting the thoughts you're having at the moment you're in. That's the net result of that first thought that you aren't right as you are. All the thinking structure that came out of it, the sum total of all of that is whatever you're perceiving right now. So you see something, you react to it in a certain way, and then you go, hang on a minute, what is that really true? You know, you have an opinion about someone, and you now you're putting this doubt into that belief system.
Right.
So that has a big, big, big impact.
Absolutely. But here's the thing too. We're all in the gap. Everyone on this call is in the gap. They can't go back to who they were. There's no forward to go to yet. So on paper, that texting that a lot of people on this call know about, that texting exchange with my family member who regrettably called me a whack job and said I need help, but then kind of took it back, whatever. Like, we look like the crazy ones. We've left everything that they are still accepting as normal and acceptable and right. And we're in the in between for what's coming. So that doubt gets louder because you can feel the energetic or even in your face physical judgment and condemnation and just, what are you doing? Right.
Oh.
And yeah, so it gets louder. And that's why I think there are so few doing it so deeply and authentically and truly isolated, because it's a very, very tricky thing to do. Sam said, you being so deeply, what's that? You said?
Yeah, no, sorry.
You were just agreeing. Okay. Sam said, you being so deeply, completely in the matrix, Katie, is directly related to your purpose in the new world. Just don't know yet what that looks like. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And that's the gap.
And Nigel says, we'll work that out when that comes. And that's the new now. Is you
that's the great thing. Yeah, I mean, that's the great thing. Like God described to me the nature of the body mind. He called it a receiver, and the nature of that conditioning built on the assumption that you're not right as you are, that you've got to do something and be someone, turns you into a transmitter of conditioning. So all the people that are reacting against us, that's what they're reacting against. That they're not being, what they're transmitting isn't being received in the right way. And what we're receiving is showing them up. The fact that we've switched on as receivers, we're asking questions. That whole shift in frequency changes out. So we're starting to receive the answer. And that changes your frequency. It changes the whole way you move through life, and it changes the way you respond to things in the moment. And that's the key thing. You are going to start responding to things in the moment and not coming from a preconceived idea. And that's going to get more and more so. So you'll find yourselves in situations, particularly with family members, friends out in the street, where maybe for the last few years you've been kind of at a loss because you don't know what's going on yourself. But what starts to come is a clarity where you don't need to actually respond to the whole situation, but you'll just speak from that awareness that you've got right now and leave a little truth bomb. And that'll get simpler and easier. And I think you'll find that more and more over this year. And that's the importance of doubting the self, like being willing to question everything you're thinking. As crazy as it makes you feel, like you can't find any ground to stand on, and it's like, oh my God, am I going crazy? You're doubting all the things you used to think. And like you say, there's nothing in the future to kind of hang your hat on. It's all, you're just in the gap. It's like everything in your
So
frame of
theoretical,
reference
right?
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't fit anymore, but there's nothing to replace it with in a sense. But that's how it starts to come together, is you find yourself in the same situations out there in the world, but there's a peace to you. You start to get a little more peaceful in that moment. You're not pulled around by it like you used to be. There's a clarity and a peace that comes over you. So you can start to feel like you can respond from that peace to them or not, depending on how you feel in that moment. And that's what happens. That's what starts to happen. You come back to the here and now, and you can respond
Yep.
to them in the here and now.
Yep. 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 Um, hold on a minute. Yeah, I was just gonna say, and Sam might know this. I know she's in Tarot by Janine's community. That whole, like, there's a bunch of discussion in here. Sam says, the gap is hell, but I wouldn't want to be them to save my life, and everyone's agreeing with her. And Janelle's like, I hated the gap and being so alone, but now I'm good with it. And it was like a huge shift happened with me. I finally stopped trying to control. It's freedom. And so
Brilliant.
I Tarot, so the community, Tarot by Janine, she just did her, what does she call it? Zodiac spread. So she does it once a month, the beginning of the month, and she just does the whole month. And one of the things she said for so many of us for February is that people are going to start coming back into your lives. People, family, friends who have written you off are going to start returning. And first thing this morning, after I watched the Zodiac spread, was a friend I love dearly who was a big part of my awakening, and a lot of the things that I knew re-followed me on Instagram, right? And so, I know that's just a little example, but there are no coincidences. It was right after seeing that. And then one of the comments on Tarot by Janine from someone was, after many years of not talking, my sister is back in my life and she's asking me questions. And I was just like, like, all I want is to love everybody. Why do they have to be so fucking mad? So it was, yeah.
It's got to be authentic, and that's the thing. Like, as much as we've been in each other's lives before this, it was all based on conditional love, because you can't doubt yourself and love unconditionally. That's the irony of it, because if you don't love yourself unconditionally, then you can't love anything or anyone unconditionally. It all becomes part of the strategy of being someone. So families, or friendship networks and family networks have this subtle kind of under the surface conditional love contract. You be who I need you to be for me, and I'll be who you need me, who you need me to be for you.
So that's
the deal. And then if you break that contract, you're like, boof. But in reality, we've all broken the contract. The best thing we could have done for ourselves and for them, serving the highest good, is to break the contract of this conditional love contract, which is the inversion of love. Love is all there is, and you don't need to be anyone or anything. It is the nature of everything. If you think any differently, you turn it into the opposite. And by us coming back out of that and anchoring within because families are systems, everything's a system. Like all of us that have done that, you've altered the dynamics, the energy flow dynamics within your family. You don't have to say anything to do that. That
You have to do
shift on its
everything.
own over time changes their trajectory through this process. So as the world starts to collapse out there, the whole way they relate to that is going to be way ahead of the curve if because there's someone in their family who can consciously see it for what it is. That consciousness is available to the entire family system. So they're going to
I just
start
got
coming.
chills when you said that.
Well, that's the thing. Once they really get what's happened, they'll look at you and go, wow, if you hadn't have done that, it would have been so much harder for me. So that's a whole other layer to it. So the
Yeah.
fact that Mike has had the guts to step back and deal with what he's had to deal with alone, for a lot of guys, that's tough. Guys have a hard time with this. We like to be alone, but we know we can't be. It's just we think we can be a man by isolating from the emotional connection, but that doesn't work at all. And for a guy to get to a point where he's willing to let go of everything he thinks he knows, that's a tough one. And he's been willing to do that, and the knock-on effect of that within his
Ah,
system and his network is going to play out in a big way. And because what have you done? You've asked for the truth. You've gone in. You've reconnected in without even knowing it necessarily. You've reconnected to the truth of who you are, which is unconditional love. Now everything around you has to. It will reflect back to you. And that's why the world's collapsing the way it is because it's reflecting back to us, so many of us who've chosen the truth. We want the truth. So now the world has to conform. That's why the Arcturians told me at the end of the coma, the work, it's all done. It is done. Everything in the
it is
physical will now
done, is
conform.
what you came out of the coma saying. It is done. And then you came out of the coma talking about the excitement of the energy that is cycling the planet right now. And then you came out of the coma talking about the distorted timelines all being condensed and distilled down to the one true one. You came out of that coma with so much gold. Oh my God.
It was
I'm really
huge. It
sorry
was
I had to go
huge.
through that hell, but thank you, coma.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, isn't it? You look back on things that on paper look like the worst thing that could happen, and you realize, wow, that was the best thing that could have happened. It's funny how backwards we can see things. That we ask for help and we get taken in the opposite direction, and we think no. Then we realize later on that was the help, and
It's
it's the
like it's like
connection.
I it, it's like when I don't know if I said this live on a show. It's an alarming thing to say, but it's like when I told you I would take 10 dead babies over because my baby who died. I would take 10 instead of living the lie. Living like I would take truth over anything. Anything.
Yes,
And that's
that
an incredible thing to say
it is.
after losing that baby. That's like
Yeah,
that's like wow. Yeah.
very, and that connects you with the truth of reality at such a core level. You're willing to. That's the thing. If you're willing to give up everything to the truth, then life
Makes me
will
want
take you. Pardon?
it makes me want to cry.
Yeah,
Like
well,
it
that's
makes you
why
get
it's right.
excited.
Yeah,
It makes
yeah,
you get
yeah.
excited
And
to meet his soul,
yes, and see,
right?
that's why you do it. That's why you do it. If everything's one, there is no separation ever. There is no death. There's no separation. You're free of the whole reason why you would feel grief in the first place. But you surrender control to get to that point, which means quite often you're going to be brought through situations that trigger all the feelings that are in the way of you connecting to the reality of that. So it's easier to say that, but yeah, and you've done that, Katie. You've done that. What else is there? The truth. That's it.
That's crazy. It almost killed me. That's
It did.
crazy.
Yeah, yeah. That's
Yeah.
why. That's why we connected, and it's why you can hear all this at the level you can because
Mm.
you met death and you were willing to see
Mm.
life through that death. And that's what the transition is. What's the word? I mean, what's another word for death? Transition.
Yeah.
That's the human race
Yeah.
dying to
Yeah.
itself. And everyone on this call has been going through that exact process. The self you think you are has been dying.
Yep. Yep. Todd just says human emotion is a gateway. Quite honestly, everything is a gateway. Like everything, like little emergencies in my home or in my head or whatever. And I'm just like, ooh, what's this gonna birth? Like, what's gonna come from this? Right? Like, I'll complain and vent to you, but there's now the perspective of, oh, what's next? Like,
Well, see,
what is this gifting me with?
exactly. You know, and that's beautiful. That's perfect. Because now your attention is on the space. You know, that's the beauty of being able to to let life put you in the gap so much that you let life take you into the gap to the point where you have enough emotional intelligence to say that you're willing to hold reality that comes to you in that spirit. How is this going to serve me? You're not just reacting to it. And that's the whole deep state controlled narrative,
Yeah.
problem, reaction,
Yeah.
solution. That reactionaryism goes. So you're not just
Yeah.
reacting, even though that will still be there.
Yeah. You can recognize the hooks, but they no longer hook you. You
Exactly.
recognize you can have the reaction internally, but externally, I got this. I got this.
That's it. And each time, each cycle, because it's a spiral, each time you get brought through all these experiences just like that those hooks get removed one by one. And that's freedom. You know, that's free. You don't need the outside world to be anything. It's always going to serve you. That's freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. Lindsay says, any suggestions on being more comfortable in the gap?
Well, yeah, look, you know, be kind to yourself if you regress. There's there's nothing wrong with stepping out and switching off for a while. You know, it's a lot. But once you see things this way, you're never going to go back. You know, once you see things like that you know, the willingness not to know is what actually transforms your life into the life you were born to live.
Yep.
Because you don't know what it is, and you don't know what's stopping you from living it. And at the recognition of that at the deepest level, you can't go back. It's got you now forever, and every single moment serves that. It doesn't matter what it looks like. It's the fact that you feel like you regress and you made a mistake happens so that you can see something more clearly. You know, going through guilt and shame's a big one, but things like going out into nature, I often find the things I should do that would help me switch off, I don't do, and I've got to keep looking at that block. You know, you get stuck in a rut. It's easy to get stuck in a rut.
It's so funny. It's like I think I'm a hero if I take my trash totes to the curb. Like this is how hard doing anything is. I think Anne said she walked outside of her house, to get the sunshine and nope, turned right around and went back in. And it's like, because there's this level of, I don't know, deep, profound understanding that, okay, right now, okay, it's another thing to do to not feel like this. I mean, that's great. I'm sure nature helps you and tons of people on this call. But for me, like, nothing has touched this for so long that I can't phone it in anymore. I can't. And I'm in winter, and I'll go outside barefoot to take the trash totes out, and then I feel like the hero in my own life. Thank you very much. Like, doing anything is awful. I hate doing anything. I don't want to do
You're the
anything.
busiest. You crack me up. You're the busiest person who never does anything I've ever met.
this stuff is my full-time job. This is it.
Yeah,
This is
and
keeping me
that's
alive.
right.
This is connecting me with people. This is what I'm doing. Nature, it's going to be there when I want it. I don't need you right now. Thank you.
And you know what? I
I,
think that
I'm
right there. Sorry, I was to interrupt, but I think that right there is the
please.
spirit. Who was it that asked that question? How do we deal with being in the gap?
Lindsay.
Lindsay, yeah, see, I think, Lindsay, that was the spirit of your question because it's all the time, isn't it? I mean, if you're anything like this is my experience anyway, and I think everyone can, once you hit the wall, it's there all
Full
the
time.
time. It's everywhere you look. Everywhere you look
Yeah.
is this feeling or this numbness, whatever you want to call it. And
Yeah.
you know, I
Okay,
mean, my
there's
way of
nature.
dealing with
There's a sunset. Woo!
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, it's like you can't find anything to replace it with because again, the paradigm shift you're talking about. I think the real value of that, and again, it doesn't need to look like anything, but the real value of being held in the gap is that you're losing all investment in this paradigm, and that's what makes it really hard. I think because everything we used to do to like you say, what can we do to make it easier? Everything we used to do to make it easier doesn't work anymore.
Doesn't
Now, as
touch it.
hard as that
Doesn't
is,
touch it.
there's a role for that because you have zero investment in this paradigm. So what's going to play out this year is the answer to that question. What can we do to make being in the
So
gap
true.
easier? Is well, the paradigm shift coming to you is what makes it easier
Yeah.
because you've got
Yeah.
nothing
Yeah.
in the way. And you know,
Yep.
when you see what's going to play out geophysically and politically in the world, technologically, especially in relationship to ETs, the nature of ETs. I mean, take that question off the table. Do ETs exist or not? Yes. Like, yes, they exist. Doesn't matter who you are or where you are on the planet. Now you know they exist. That question's gone. The impact of that playing out before we have open contact first, it has to be seen as recognised as real. That question off the table. You'll see them you'll see the media reaction, you'll see all the political parties, you'll see all the people who have an investment in this current paradigm reacting against it exactly for what it is. You'll see right through it. It won't even have a grip on you. What you'll focus
Yep.
on is the benefit of it. And that'll be like on a lot of levels. So your ability to connect with the value of what's collapsing, of what's this tumultuous period that's about to hit on a big way, the value of being held in the gap is that you see the value of every single moment of it. It's like, wow,
Yeah.
fantastic. Well, the energy of that it's like pure and clear and direct. It's you return to being connected to reality for what it really is
Yeah.
instead of the mind control.
Yep. Yep. There's this deep knowing too that, this head to toe body pain that like the doing story of Katie says, well, go outside and move and it'll stop. Well, no. But
You don't
like there's a
feel it.
deep knowing. What's that?
Yeah, I mean, if you can do it, but if you don't feel it, it's okay not to do it because you don't feel it as
And
well.
I'm
You know.
not. Exactly. It's like there's nothing that can make me do anything I don't want to do right now. And it's a Katie I've never known before. So I did everything, right? I did everything everybody wanted me to do ever all the time. And now I won't do any of it. But in that is the programming and the hook of you're lazy, you're not doing anything, you're not productive, you're not performing, you have no value, you have no worth, like all of that, blah, blah, blah. And
Yeah,
so I have a higher perspective on it. I just do.
perfect.
And
And again,
yeah.
Lindsay's question, how do you make it any easier? I think, like what you just touched on, a big problem we have is we argue with the process itself. So seeing the value, I think personally the biggest problem with being held in the gap isn't the gap itself or the role it plays. It's the feeling it brings up that makes us argue with it. We argue with the
Yep.
process without realizing at the inversion. This is how it works. We argue with the very process that brings us back to the truth of who we are. We fight against life.
Yep.
So that seeing the value of being held in the gap is what always brought me back to a sense of peace with it. That I kept sort of getting caught up in arguing with it or doubting myself, and then realized, oh, that's why I'm here. And there's something in me. It's like there's a piece, something switched off. Like I realized more and more as time went on after I asked for help in '93 that everything that was happening was that help. And as intense as it got, there was a peace that came over me that never quite left. And it was because of that gap, being held in that gap long enough. And I think you'll find that, Lindsay, and everybody, you can relate to that question. And more
Oh,
this year
they're
too.
relating to a lot of this. They're relating to a lot of this.
And, the Arcturians described it. They said you will, at a certain point, and I think it's coming up very soon, you'll look back on everything that you've experienced and you'll see the perfection of each moment and how it brought you to the moment of realization that you have now. And gratitude will dissolve pain.
Yeah. I can't wait for that part. It's trickling in. It's trickling in. Sam says, before awakening, carry water. After awakening, carry water. She says correct. But it's
Chop
that
wood,
saying
carry
of chop wood, carry water. Like, and Anne says she feels like a child having a tantrum screaming, don't tell me what to do. You're not the boss of me. Like, that's the way I am. I'm like, oh yeah, I can stay inside for 6 months. Just watch me.
So there.
I'll show you.
And I think you don't truly know a thing until you've lived it. I think you've just got to live through all of this.
I think so.
It's funny how once you hit the wall and you ask the question, what's the truth at that level, it's kind of it has its way with you. And you go through all of these, I know that, I look back on, there you go, like that's that number again.
Oh, 222? Yep. I gotcha.
It has its way. Let's let it go of control.
What'd you say?
It is too, yeah. Well, once you hit the wall like that, the process, you ask for the truth, now it has its way with you. Instead of us having our way with life, life has its way with us. So, we go through these phases of different parts of ourselves coming out.
Mike just said short version of the Serenity Prayer. Fuck it. I love that guy. I'm so glad you gave him some kudos tonight for being a man and living in the gap, living in the isolation, living in the withdrawing from society. I'm so glad you gave him kudos. Because this is
that's a rare thing.
Right? I can hear my mom downstairs laughing. I told her tonight as I took the bins to the curb as the warrior daughter I am, I told my mom, you don't have to watch the show every Tuesday. You can do whatever you want. You've been listening to Gareth as long as I have. She's like, I know. I just didn't want her to ever think she was obligated to listen to us go back and forth about stuff.
Hi, Sarah. If you can hear me laugh.
Oh, the program. Todd says the program just hit 2 hours, 22 minutes, and 22 seconds.
Ooh.
We've ended before. We have ended before on 2:22:23. I think we ended.
Just hear an applause.
Oh, Mom says hi, Gareth. Oh God, did Todd do that? Todd must have done the applause.
What is happening?
Mom just said hi in the chat. And everyone's saying hi to Sarah.
This is Todd. Ground control to Major Todd. This has been the best show ever. This has been really, really good. This is really, really good. To be happening at this time, I feel is like everything, if you as you reflect on some of the things you were talking about, how everything is actually upside down. Like, the things Gareth was talking about, like they're being portrayed one way, like the ET thing, right? And those that have a problem with it, that pretty much is going to continue to tell us what we're seeing anyway, especially over the last few days. Yeah. Great show, though. Man.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
yeah.
All right, you ready to call it, Gareth?
Yeah, but we could go on all night, Dave. But
I wouldn't care, but I've got to go somewhere.
You're fine. We're out of here.
But I'm good.
I think we've all got a gap to be, haven't we?
Yeah, the gap I think is a really good subject. By the way, the gap that people were talking about. I think that's a really good
Maybe
subject.
that's the name of the show, Todd.
The gap.
The gap.
Well, let me know. Let me know.
Ooh. What do people think about the gap? The gap.
Hey, Todd, before I text you 10 times today
Yeah.
and tomorrow, make sure you fix the thumbnail.
You might have to text me, remind me, but probably not. I do it in my rounds. I go to the YouTube studio and do all the reels and everything, and I check everything. So I'll find it. But you're welcome to send me a note. No problem.
Okay. All right.
For
Todd.
coming in, thank you everybody, and we will see you tomorrow with 3 shows. See y'all next week.
Awesome.
All right. Take care.
All right.
Thanks, Todd.
See you next week.
Yes,
Bye,
thanks. See you,
everybody.
everyone.
Love you.